There is a way that you use your sales to be able to be effective. Weakness isn't real. It's not natural. It's manufactured. If you want to do something or you want to move forward quickly, you got to have a process for it. And it's easier to influence somebody if you're not trying to communicate in a language they don't understand.
All right, so for those of you guys that don't know Alex, he's a behavioral analyst consultant, and he's a certified trainer of advanced integrative psychology. He's my disc guy, he's a disc guru, but he works and trains with real estate agents all around the country. And he also works with executives and business owners on ways that they can better adapt their communication and their behavior to more effectively lead their team and people. So I'm sure a lot of us know what DISC is. We know for analytical, driver, amiable. So Alex sort of takes DISC a step further and kind of peels back the layers to take a deeper look and dive as to why we are the way we are, and like how we can better understand and relate to our clients and the people that we're leading. So Alex, I'll kind of let you take it from there.
Awesome. So DISC sucks. I'm going to just start off. I'm the DISC guy and I think DISC sucks. So before we begin, I actually want to start with something a little bit more thought-provoking. I want to open up some mics and I want you guys to talk to me. Prove to me, like, I don't know, this. How do you guys know this is real? Somebody.
You can touch it, see it, feel it.
See it. Okay. Optical nerve into the brain. You touch it. Well, with quantum physics, you're not actually touching it. It's an electromagnetic disbursement of energy, processes through the neurology into the brain, and then you hallucinate that you're feeling it down at your hand. Here's the thing. All of you agree with me this thing is real, right? You guys are nodding. Okay. So here's the thing. You agree with me, but the only way I know you agree with me is because I'm observing you agree with me. So what that means is it doesn't mean that there isn't fact, there isn't reality, but reality is actually perception. Fact is nothing more than an accumulation of perceptions that we all agree on. But the problem is that in order to agree, we have to observe it. So I start there for this reason. Everybody has some basis that they're coming to this training or this workshop with. And I want to, instead of arguing reality, just give you another reality, a different way to look at things. So what happens is in life, we have more than 2 million bits of information coming in. There's a book called Flow by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and it's 2 million bits of information. Of it, we process 126. It's a dump truck of toothpicks coming down. We grab a handful, we go, this is real, this is all that's real. And this is what we're focused on. The challenge is this is also what our clients are focused on. This is what our prospects are focused on, but their handful and our handful is different. So what happens is we delete, we distort, we generalize the information, create a picture in our head. That picture crossed with our state and our physiology generates a behavior. The behavior generates a result, and that result then produces the way that we filter information. It affects our beliefs, our values, our aptitude, how we feel. So when you're interacting with somebody and you make a bunch of calls and you get a no, how do you reset yourself? How do you keep yourself in that positive mindset so the next time you pick up the phone, you're not basing it upon the reaction you just got? Does that make sense to you guys? So today what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about the DISC assessment. We're going to be talking about values and understanding what are your unique strengths and weaknesses and how to capitalize on that. I'm going to be talking about a couple of people's profiles that are on the call, but I want you to understand that everybody has their own reality. Reality isn't real. Reality is real for the person. So inside of the DISC assessment, one of the things that I often hear is the DISC assessment is fixed. Whatever your DISC is, that's always going to be your DISC. How many of you have heard that before? Got a handful. Okay. So the challenge with that concept is DISC measures behavior. Your behavior changes over time. In fact, it changes moment to moment. How can a tool that measures something that changes be consistent? You see, the DISC is more about spectrums of behavior. When we start talking about the DISC assessment, I talk about it very differently than what a lot of people do. A lot of people who teach the DISC assessment, high D good, low D bad. I can tell you the strengths of a high D and the weaknesses of a high D. I can tell you the strengths of a low D and the weaknesses of a low D. The thing is that everybody operates in a spectrum, and the way that you perform, the way that you achieve a high level of success is to be you. So what I'm going to do, we're going to talk about the Genius model. In the early 2000s, a company called Intermetrics, the company behind the WiseHire, they ran a study that wanted to look at why people performed at the peak, what they called genius level performance. And what they looked at, so there was 75 PhDs, almost 200,000 participants, 23 countries. And they were looking at 5 different levels of performance: below average, average, above average, excellent, and genius level performance. And what they wanted to know is what allowed someone to perform at their peak. So this is interesting to you because you, as a salesperson, want to be able to create an environment where you're successful. How do you do that? And what they looked at was natural talents to go in certain positions, what causes someone to be successful. And they found no statistical correlation. So despite what a lot of people teach, there isn't a good sales profile. There is a way that you use your sales to be able to be effective. But every single person that was performing at the genius level had two acquired skills: self-awareness and authenticity. Write these words down: self-awareness and authenticity. Self-awareness is knowing what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. It's knowing who you are and when you're being yourself. Authenticity is creating an environment where your success is dependent upon your strengths and your weaknesses are mitigated by people and process. I want to make a distinction. I want you to write down the word weakness on your paper. Take a note on this. Weakness isn't real. It's not natural. It's manufactured. There are things that you suck at. It doesn't become a weakness until you make your success dependent upon it. Like my ability to shoot a 3-point basket is not a weakness unless I'm playing basketball. If I'm not playing basketball, it's not a weakness. It's just something I suck at. Does that make sense? So then it's a matter of restructuring your environment in order to create authenticity, in order to create success. So the idea is you've got the person, you've got the role, you take the role, learn the role, and you identify gaps. And it's not so much about fixing yourself, but improving your self-awareness and mitigating your weaknesses. And then adjusting the environment, the role, to be able to produce the results you're looking for. So today what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and stop this. So now we are back to us. Emily, able to come off the mic and let's talk through profiles. I talked to Emily beforehand. I got her permission to be able to do this live on air, and I think this is going to be fun for all of us. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at Emily's profile. Emily just took a new profile. This assessment is something that I call the Advanced Insight Assessment. I call it the Personality Blueprint because Advanced Insight Assessment doesn't mean anything to people. Personality Blueprint does. When you look at it, it's made up of 3 different psychologies. The DISC assessment, which most of you know of, looks at behavioral tendencies. It's based on the work of Dr. William Marston. In the early 1920s, there was a division in the psychological community, and a lot of people started to look at abnormal psychology. Why are people weird and how do we fix them? Dr. Marston, who is also the guy who created Wonder Woman, just so you know, Dr. Marston wanted to start focusing on normal people because he didn't understand them and he wanted to understand normal people. He looked at 4 categories. The DISC, you are not a D, I, S, or C. You are all 4 categories. It's not fixed. It operates in a spectrum in all 4 categories. We'll talk about the DISC in a moment. The next thing that it has is it has a values index. The values index is based on the work of Allport and Spronger. Allport and Spronger looked at intrinsic motivators that drive behavior. This is why you do what you do. And then this is a formal axiology report called the Attribute Index, which is based on the work of Dr. Hartman, which looks at how you process and filter information. If any of you would like to take a free assessment, if you go to youdon'tknowdisc.com, there's a big button that you push to get a free assessment, and you're welcome to take it. So this assessment gives you a lot of information in a very succinct piece. So when I start to talk about profile, Emily, I'm going to walk you through your profile, but I want you guys to understand how it works. The first thing I do is I look at the DISC. I look at behavioral tendencies, the highs and the lows of each of them. There is strengths in the highs and the lows. So Emily, you are medium to high D, low I, medium to high S, high C. This is your profile. That's your tendency. I look at the color, not the gray. The gray is how you're adapting in your environment. So based upon a lot of people who talk about sales, this is one of the things that you'll look at and go, oh, this is a detriment, because the low I isn't social. They're antisocial is what I hear all the time. That's not true. The I, high I, outgoing, gregarious, low I, introspective. So Emily, one of the things for you, when you're working with people, you're going to be better off in a situation where you're asking questions and getting the other person talking. So instead of doing the traditional sales where you've got to learn the script and learn what to say, you shift the conversation. All of a sudden you start asking questions. Now you can get to engage because you can do it through introspective. Does that make sense? And does that resonate with you?
It's very true.
Right. So for those of you who are maybe in a lower I category in your DISC profile, it's like, I got to learn the script. I got to learn the script. No, you don't. You don't. What you need to learn is you need to learn a different script. You need to learn how to ask questions because that's how you engage. So Emily, you've got this flexibility. You've got the high D and low D, and you're right there in the middle. So you can go either direction. The D spectrum looks at how people tend to move forward. it's not about decisiveness and aggressiveness. That's whatever, like I hear it all the time. The high D is decisive because they don't want to slow down. It has nothing to do with just being decisive for decisive sake.
Hey,
In
Alex.
fact, a lot of the high Ds, yeah.
What is like, so there's the gray's the adaptive style, the red's the natural. What does it mean when the adaptive is normally is higher, like in Emily's, than the natural? Is she just
Right.
like high alert?
No, in the environment, she's being more decisive and moving forward quicker than she normally would. That's all it means. So you take
So,
whatever
in
the
work
spec-
environment.
Yep, in the work environment where she was
Okay.
taking this. So when you look at the assessment, D, I'm going to talk about the disc, not just Emily's. That's what I'm doing right now. Is I'm talking about the highs and the lows. High D focused on moving forward quickly. Low D moves forward deliberately. It's not that a low D can't make a decision. It's that they want to be deliberate in making the decision, making sure they have enough time and information. So if you need to get somebody who's a low D to move, you need to install time. I know you've been thinking about this for a while, and I want to make sure it's the right decision for you as we move forward quickly. Like, oh, okay. You're allaying that fear because they're worried about doing it the wrong way. So the low D, you just simply have to make sure that you install time and information. So when you're working with a high D, it's about moving forward. A lot of people go, yeah, they're really aggressive and they're angry. It's like, no. They're mad at the situation. You don't become like they're not even thinking about you until you start to voice it. Then you become the problem. Does that make sense? So when you're working with somebody who's a high D, it's never personal. So that's the D spectrum, looking at moving forward quickly or moving forward intentionally, deliberately. The I category, I looks at how people tend to interact with people. High I, outgoing, gregarious. Low I, introspective. It is not introvert, extrovert. This is very important for people to understand, especially the high I introverts. Introvert, extrovert is about how you recharge. Introvert, extrovert is about how you recharge. High I's and low I's is about how you interact with people. So if you're a high I who's outgoing, gregarious, but you're an introvert, it means you're a really social person who burns out if you don't give yourself time away from people. I'm seeing some nods. So that's a thing. People who have a high I, same thing. You can actually be a low I extrovert, meaning you're not very social. You don't like to talk to people. You like to listen, but you need to be around people to recharge your energy. I was one of these people. I had to go to a restaurant and go sit in a crowd in order to recharge. Does this make sense? So when we're looking at these profiles, what you want to do is you want to identify what is yours and then what is the strengths and weaknesses and how do you mitigate them? So like, for instance, when I was talking with you, Emily, low I, you don't like to talk, so you got to get the other person talking. So instead of scripts, ask questions. The S is about pace, stability, how much you like doing things the same way consistently. The high S is very stable. They're stable emotionally, they're stable in their actions, they're stable in their behavior. What that means is a high S is going to do things consistently. If they're doing it right, they'll do it right. If they're doing it wrong, they'll do it wrong, but they'll do it consistently. So in order to make a change, you have to do slow change and you got to just keep moving it until all of a sudden it's finished. So if you're working with a high S, you got to put bumpers in place until they're pointed the right direction. If you are a high S, you've got to be patient and make that change. And once you've made it, you can let go and it'll just low S, fast pace. They're quick, but they're also spontaneous. They're very expressive. They tend to move a lot, which means that slowing down and doing something consistently is a challenge, being able to have that consistency. So knowing that, how can you put something in place to be able to mitigate that, right? So if I know, it's like, no, I've got to get myself to do this consistently. I'm not going to. I need to recover. I need to make sure that every time I don't do it, I make a commitment the next day. One of the things I love for the low S personality types, instead of committing to doing something for the next 30 days, like I'm going to make calls for the next 30 days, instead, every day for the next 30 days, I'm going to make the commitment. So every day I'm going to make that commitment. D.
What does it mean when you have, seeing here with Emily, right? It's a high S, but a very low adaptive style. So just remind me, what does that exactly mean?
Right. So when you look at something like this, what that means is right now, Emily, in your environment, you like steady, stable, and you're trying to speed things up. Either you've got pressure or you've got momentum, one of the two. Either I need to get this going, so you're feeling a lot of pressure and I got to get this moving, so she's speeding up, or, oh my God, I've got momentum and I want to ride this momentum. Either way, it's an excited energy that makes her move quicker. It's a stress response. Good or bad, doesn't matter. It's still a stress response. Does that make sense, Dean? Awesome. Emily, does that resonate with you?
You're reading me like a book. Yeah, that's very true.
Yep. So when I look at her adaptive, she's being more decisive, trying to speed things up, trying to be more social, and She is being a little bit more innovative in how she does things, letting go a little bit of the it has to be proven, let's go ahead and give it a try. So the C category looks at how you follow the procedures of others. This is another thing that is taught wrong all the time. High C's have attention to detail. Low C's have no attention to detail. That is not true. Low C's have no attention to your detail. They care about the details that are important to them. High C's care about the way things are supposed to be done because they're looking for a quality result, a quality predictable result. High C's, they're resistant to change. No, they're not. They're adverse to risk. So if you're looking at a high C, it's not that they're resistant to change. You need to mitigate the change by talking about the fact, you know what, a lot of clients have had this before. I know what the situations is like. As long as we do this, and we've got a process in place to incorporate feedback. So if it doesn't work, we've already got something to be able to incorporate the feedback and make the change. So I know this process is going to work. And they're like, oh, okay. That's all it takes. If you want to implement change in your organization, you just need to talk in terms that the other person understands. Low C, people have a hard time. So Emily, for instance, you're really good at following process, but you know those people who really struggle to follow process? The challenge is that even if they want to, that low C, it's not that they're defiant or they're obstinate, it's that they struggle with it. So instead of getting them to follow process, like the people that are on your team and the people that you're working with, all you need to do is put good warning signs in place to let them know they're going off track and develop a good recovery strategy. So it's like ADD. Instead of trying to focus, distract yourself. If you have a low C, instead of trying to follow process, put warning signs and get a good recovery strategy so that you recover before you fall. That's it. Does that make sense? So this is the DISC assessment, and it's great because it gives you a good insight. And I was able to just kind of walk Emily through her. Like the biggest thing is, if you want to do something where you want to move forward quickly, you got to have a process for it. If you want to be social and outgoing, you've got to create a process for how you socialize and how you connect. And you're going to do better with a process if you ask questions as opposed to trying to be the talkative one. So everything you do, drive it by process. If you're struggling to get momentum in what you're doing, literally, if you write down step 1, open email, step 2, go through email, step 3, close window, and you put that written down on your paper, it seems stupid, but if you're struggling to take action on something, if you give yourself a process to follow, you'll start taking action. So next piece I want to talk about is I want to talk about values. Values are the intrinsic motivators. This is more important than the DISC because this is what drives you to do what you do. There are 7 distinct buckets that each of these fall into, and everybody has something different. One of the things is I've run 7,000 real estate agent profiles. And in the last couple of years, what I found is that majority of real estate agents are an IS personality type, and they actually have a medium to low economic score. And what that means is real estate agents are struggling to build business because they're setting financial goals when money doesn't actually motivate them. So what you're going to need to do is you need to understand, why do you do what you do? What are your motivators? Aesthetic looks at balance and harmony, looking things to feel good, to be pretty, to have a nice environment, making sure that things are fair. Economic is about utility. What's in it for me? Return on investment. Individualistic is being unique, being valued as being different. Political, where economic is what's in it for me, political is what's in it for my people. Altruistic is helping people for the sake of helping people. Regulatory, making sure there's systems and processes. And theoretical is learning for the sake of learning. Low scores, they do it if. So for instance, a low regulatory prefers freedom and flexibility. A low altruistic will help people if it meets one of these other values. So Emily, looking at your particular profile, you've got a 99 in economic and an 80 in political. Anything above a 60 is a decision-making piece. So this is, you want systems in place to make sure that you and your people are taken care of. They're going to do whatever you can to make sure that you and your people are taken care of. If you invest your time, it's either got to give you a return, your people a return, or it's got to be building a system to make things easier for you and your people. If not, it's not worth your time.
Yep.
Does that resonate?
Yeah, that's pretty. My altruistic is as low as it is, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, and here's the challenge is you love helping people and you will absolutely help people until they're not your people, and then you don't care. Mm-hmm. And so the challenge is like, when you look at this, it's like, these are my people. But when someone goes from being my people to not my people, you struggle to help them. And instead of struggling to help them, all you have to do is try and figure out, how do I recover them to my people? So like if your clients do something that irks you and makes you go, yeah, I don't like that person anymore. If you are still needing to work with them, all you have to do is go, okay, how can I recover that relationship to make them my people again? And you'll go back into naturally helping them. Does that make sense? Same thing. There's a lot of people who have judgment about, like, if you do something for the wrong intent. And I go, like, one of the great examples is I've seen social media shaming of the person who feeds a homeless person and takes a selfie. It's like, oh yeah, he's just doing it for recognition. And I go, right, but the homeless person still got the food that he hadn't had. And he probably got asked, is it okay that I take your picture? And the homeless guy probably said, yeah, sure. I mean, he was so grateful for it. So the thing is like, Emily, if you want to be able to do stuff from a community impact, you've got to look at what it does for the reputation for your team and how it helps you and what you get out of it. And you'll be able to do a lot for people. The other thing is you actually have a naturally high altruistic. This is the thing that most people may not see in a lot of what your behavior is realistically what you've learned is that if you want to have a bigger impact, that you can't do it. And so what you do is you help your people so that they can help the world. So you've become more isolated to become more of a high level leader so that you can focus on helping your people so that your people can have the impact because you recognize the limited reach of your own. So it's not that helping people isn't your thing. It's that you've learned you need to draw boundaries and you need to focus on your people so that they can help the world. Does that resonate?
It does, yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to be able to open up for questions and discussions. I'm going to be able to stick around. We've got about half hour. I wanted to teach you guys DISC and values from a different perspective. There is no such thing as a good profile. Every profile has the ability to be successful if you structure the environment the right way. And once you understand the intrinsic motivators, you know how to frame your activity to be able to drive motivation to create the action that you need to have consistent results. So I appreciate your guys' time. I appreciate the conversation and I want to open this up. What kind of questions do you guys have? What do you want to know? How can I support you?
I have one question. So
Yeah.
of the 7,000 or so, however many that was in that assessment of all the realtors that you did this for, was there like another section that was like a top producer section and the ones that were just like the newbies, or was there any difference there? It was just across the board, a DISC assessment for everybody?
I can find top producers with almost every DISC profile. I can show you top producers with almost every DISC profile. Every leader, I would say most of the leaders that I have seen have a high DI personality type, and they've got a high economic and a high political. They at least have a high economic. What I found though is one of the reasons why that is because leaders suck at leading the other profiles. It's not that the other profiles can't be successful. It's that they're trying to be the high D personality type. And so you get these people who are trying to be inauthentic, which goes back to that Genius study and goes, if people are authentic, which is why you still, majority may be this way, but if you actually look, you can be successful with the other profile types. You just need to structure the environment differently. Does that make sense, Dean?
Yeah, it does. Definitely.
So when you're looking at an organization, like for instance, I was just out at a retreat in Orlando for some of the top producers in EXP. They brought me out for their alpha retreat. And I was able to run profiles and go, every single top performer had these certain traits and everyone was missing these certain traits. And a lot of people went, oh, well, then that's the profile we need to look. I go, or as leaders, you need to learn how to lead the other types. There's two different ways to look at that statistic. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
So Alex, you're saying it's more like we have to become chameleons to the other types because we can't change them. So we have to change ourselves to lead them.
Communication is about influence. And it's easier to influence somebody if you're not trying to communicate in a language they don't understand. So you don't have to become adaptive. You don't have to become a chameleon. However, if you don't become a chameleon, then you should restrict the people you work with to the people that are like you for more efficiency. If you want to have more people, like a broader spectrum of people you're working with, either as clients or as people in your organization, then you need to develop your leadership skills to lead those different types. If you want to only be you and be just like, I just don't want to worry about adapting, then make sure that you filter out the people who aren't like you so that you don't have the frustration and waste your time. So run something, filter them out, and only work with the people that are like you so that it's natural. Those are kind of the two structures to build.
But that's not really, I'm not disagreeing you, but in my mind, you say work with the people like me. If I had a bunch of me's on my team, I'd want to kill them.
If you had a bunch of yous on your team, they wouldn't have a team, because they would all want to go run their own team. That's the problem. Like, you have a team, which is why you don't want to be able to just bring people in that are like you, because they'll want to go start their own team. You want people who are different than you, who can buy into your vision, who have similar values and motivations, which is why I'm doing a series on my Instagram right now about making the perfect hire. It's like, you need to understand who are you as a team, as an organization, and making sure the people you bring in are a good fit. This is the other thing a lot of agents don't do well, is they take anyone as a client and they're killing themselves. They're killing their efficiency, their happiness, their fulfillment, because they're like, oh yeah, well, this guy wants a house. It's like, it doesn't mean that they're your client. There's enough real estate agents you guys can pass stuff back and forth if you really wanted to, or you got to just accept this person's different than you. It's not right or wrong. How do I need to adapt in order to lead them? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What other questions you guys have?
Do you think under stress, that you have a secondary like trait to yourself?
Yes. So there's something called an amygdala hijacking. And when people are under stress, what happens is there's a deregulation that happens and the person is no longer thinking. So if you go like this with your hand, the thumb represents the reptilian part of the brain, safety and security. The palm represents mammalian, which is acceptance and belonging. And then the fingers represents the neocortex, the thinking part of the brain. It's like this. When you're working with your clients, you need to be able to help regulate them so that they can hear logic and reason. So when you ask if they have a stress response, if they have a different personality type, they do, so do you. But the problem is it's not just a different personality type, it also lacks complete access to logic and reason because it's emotionally triggered. So you need to create seen, safe, accepted, and protected to bring them back into thinking, and then you can navigate them. So a lot of times that's why the adaptive communication is so important, is you need to understand who you're talking to so that you can make them feel like they're safe and they belong because you're speaking their language. Does that make sense, Richard?
Yeah. Do you think that there's any particular questions you would ask right off the bat to figure that out within 30 seconds?
Yeah, I can shake somebody's hand and tell you who what their profile is. The biggest thing is when you want to listen for the DISC, D, you're looking for how quickly they move. Are they wanting to move forward or are they wanting to be intentional? I, do they like to talk or do they prefer to listen? The S, do they tend to be emotionally expressive or do they tend to be more reserved in their expressiveness? And C, are they focused on the right way to do things? Or are they focused on like, how do we know this is going to work? What's the quality? Are they more like looking for quality guarantee or are they more looking for, is it going to work? And so that's the low C. So that's the higher low. So when I do the conversation, I always just look point A, point B, where in the spectrum are you? Cool, you're there. Now I know how to talk to you. It's 30 seconds because all you have to do is understand. Everyone wants to know every step. And I go, no, just know the 2 points and then figure out where they are in that spectrum. Does that make sense, Richard?
Yeah, makes complete sense. Thank you.
If you email me, Alex at my disc guy or Alex at youdon'tknowdisc.com, I've got a little cheat sheet that I can send you. That's like a quick tell card on how to cold read people for the disc profile.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I thought it was interesting that you said there's certain people that you should and shouldn't work with. And when I took your class when was that, in October in Vegas?
Yeah.
Resonated with me. And so now I'm really intentional on the type of people and the type of personalities that I work with, because I know there's certain types out there that I won't do well with, and it's not worth my time. So it's easier just to refer them out to someone else on my team or to, go a different direction with them. So how, again, you said you're going to send that out, but what's like the quickest way, especially if you're on the phone, because we're all calling a lot, what's the quickest way to be able to kind of decipher and figure out who you're working with before you even, I guess. So
the communication, the way that relationships work, everyone thinks that it's person A and person B, but there's actually a third. The way that I like to teach it, Emily, is waves. So if you take 2 rocks and you drop it in the water, each creates a wave, but it's the interference pattern that's the relationship. So how you know if it's a good fit or not is you need to know what you are, what's your natural, what your weakness is. And then once you identify that, then you go, okay, so now which category do I feel like I can adapt to and which ones I can't? So you and I've talked about the whole the people who like to talk a lot work a lot better than the people who are more shy and reserved, because you can ask them questions and then they'll go off. And it's like, cool, I love talking to them because all I have to do is plant a seed and they just start talking. So that's an easy way, is if you're having to carry the conversation, it's probably not a good fit. So understanding yourself is really the biggest key. The better you understand yourself, the better you can cold read the other person. Then it's a matter of, if you're on the phone with somebody, hey, how you doing? Good. Awesome. I'm glad you're good. So what's going on? Stuff. Okay. Help me out here. Let's have a conversation. If you start hearing those kinds of responses, that is, I don't trust you. That's a triggered response. So the first thing you need to do whenever you're on a conversation with someone is you have to see them. You have to make them feel safe. You have to make them feel accepted and protected by you, because until that point, you're not talking logic and reason. You can't go into your pitch. You can't go into anything until they understand that you're there for them. Hey, this is Alex. I'm probably interrupting your dinner and you hate sales calls. I hate sales calls too. How you doing? Do you have about 5 minutes? Can I talk to you? Sure. You just hit their objections. You're like, okay, yeah, you see where I am. Does that make sense? And so being able to get them back to this and then listening to their language is going to tell you a lot. Are they focused on moving forward, or are they focused on moving forward intentionally? High D, low D. Are they talkative, or are they asking questions and wanting to listen? I, low I. When you start looking at the values, You got to listen to the things that they're talking about that are important, but then ask the second question. Okay, why is that important? What will that do for you? The first level is often needs. Second level is motivators. Yeah, I really, right now, my focus is I want to make sure I'm getting enough money for the house. Their motivation is not economic. Why is that important to you? Well, I need to make sure that my family's taken care of. It. Okay, people. It's their people. They're worried about their people. So you got to go down a level because everyone focuses on their needs, not their motivators. Their motivators are that deeper level. Does that make sense?
So Alex, what we do, what we do is that, we're obviously, we're doing a lot of cold calling on this Phone Warriors group as well, right? And so
Yeah.
a lot of times we have to get people within the first like 10 to 20 seconds. And so in order to make them feel accepted and wanted and trust and build that trust as soon as possible, would you suggest that you should listen for more of a tone of how they say something or specific words that they're actually saying?
Both. So
Okay.
you want to listen for the tone more. So the words have no inherent meaning. That's the first thing is you got to let go of the idea that a word means something. Because if they say house, it has a picture in their head that's very different. That's that 2 million bits. They have a handful. This is what they think of when they think of house. What you want to listen for is where they have an analogical marker, meaning a tonal shift or some sort of an energy shift around certain words, because that indicates that that word activates a neural network inside of their brain that is partial to whatever they're talking about. So if they talk about, yeah, my family is really important versus, yeah, my family, like you can hear there's an analogical marker, there's a pause. All of a sudden, what that's doing is it's not the word, it's the network that it activates in the brain that shows that has value and intrinsic motivation for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that the same thing as like a visualization would like creep in?
Yes and no. Some people have visual, some people don't have visual. And so visualization will creep in for some people because they have a more of a visual, that's their representation system. It's how they think, but some people think in sounds and some people think in feelings. So they don't, not everyone has pictures.
Awesome.
Yeah. So if any of you guys are interested, I have set up a coupon code Warrior, and I've got a link to be able to go in and do a profile debrief where I'll sit down one-on-one with you for an hour or 2 hours and go over the coupon code Warrior. Instead of it being a normal 1 hour session, it's 2 hours either for you or for you and your team, where I'll come in and I'll either do a training for you, or I can just walk you through your personal profile and you understand what are your strengths and weaknesses and how do you adapt it. And I find that a lot of people like John, you posted on your story about Gene, in 30 minutes, I was able to help people understand. They've been in real estate for 40 years. He teaches the disc and he's like, I've never heard this before. And so it's the concept of being able to sit down and go, this is who you are. These are your strengths. These are your weaknesses and how you adapt them. And it'll be able to help quite a bit. So love to extend that invite. Thank you guys for having me on today. I appreciate it very much.